Hey everyone, welcome back to the For the Reef podcast. Tonight we're talking with my wife Kelly, and if you're following the video feed here, then you'll see her. So we've talked about this for a while. Ian can't make the show tonight, but he has his own stories with his wife. I think everybody kind of has, in some point in their lives, laughed with their spouse or argued with their spouse about their hobbies and their passions for coral reefs or fish tanks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think there definitely hasn't been arguments, but there's definitely been some times where I kind of just have to stop and think like, okay, what just happened? What is going on? What am I looking at right now?
And it's kind of become the norm.
Yes, more often than not, it's becoming more frequent.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, to be frank, when we first started dating, I don't think I was too... No, I had a fish tank for sure.
You didn't. And I did not know about this passion or this hobby. You weren't fish Mitch, you were football Mitch, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd always reference like, oh yeah, back when I had a fish tank, this and this. But when we first met, you didn't have a fish tank in your mom's house. And then all of a sudden, Mitch got a fish tank.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a new side of Mitch that I didn't know before. Yeah. A good side.
Yeah. So like if I go back in my mind, it was like early on grade school.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, actually, the way that I actually saw your first fish tank, I believe it was right before, like maybe our second Christmas together. You said, hey, Kelly, like, I know my mom's already told me no, but like, maybe if you ask her, like, hey, do you think I could get Mitch like a fish tank for Christmas? She might say yes.
Which is the same thing we did with our dog.
Yes.
So my mom, bless her soul, if you press her hard enough and long enough, she usually gives in. Which is why growing up I had, reptiles and, insects and fish tanks. And I had at one point, I think there was like 6 fish tanks in the house. We ended up having a fire because of one of the tanks, and it wasn't even my fault. It was a faulty light, and that was all determined. But nonetheless, when you almost burn your mother's house down, you
understand her hesitation.
Yeah, exactly.
To have another fish tank in the house.
Yes. So there was like probably a 2-year period where I didn't have a fish tank. I call it like the dark days. And then I finally convinced her, like Kelly said, and from that point it was kind of open because once I started dating Kelly, it was about time for me to move out anyway. So that's kind of how we got to.
Yeah. And actually when we did move out, your mom kind of had this like grin and kind of chuckle going on, and I said, what's going on? Like, what's up? And she's like, all I'm saying, Kelly, it's all yours now. And I didn't really understand like what she was referring to, but now I understand. Mm-hmm. It's all of the fish stuff, the tubes, the nets, the random piping. Like it's insane. It's crazy how much little things. And even when we do like a big cleanup or something in our house, I'm like, okay, Mitch, like you haven't touched this stuff in like a year. Like, can we move it out? And he goes, no, like what if one day I need this part? Mm-hmm. And I'm not gonna have it if we get rid of it.
Yeah. So. One thing I've noticed for sure as a husband is that with your hobby, you definitely have to consider your wife or your partner in every stage of the hobby. I mean, like if you don't consider how that person's feeling about what you're doing, then your hobby's probably not going to last, or your relationship's probably not going to last.
So you got to weigh which one's more
exactly.
important.
And I kind of have these two things in my life where I'm like, I'm never getting rid of this hobby, and I'm never getting rid of my wife. So I've got to make them work.
Symbiotic.
They have to be symbiotic. And that means rule number one, I have to keep everything clean. If I don't keep things clean, if there's, fish crap all over the house, if anything smells is a big one. Can't have any weird smells and anything like that. If I have smells, there's never okay, but anything dirty or looks dirty, it needs to be tucked away from view.
Yes. And you know what? I will give it to you. You have upheld that. You've done a great job at that. I can't complain. Like, everything is kind of in this one section of our house now. And even that section, you have everything kind of organized to the best it can be. And you've done a pretty good job at that. So I'll give you that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So now, I think we've talked about it, but in the house that we just moved in about a year ago, there's a furnace room here. So this tank behind me, this tank is obviously in the main living parts of the house. It's in our office. It's on the main floor, and then it's plumbed into the basement to the furnace room.
Which is why we can never move.
Yeah. And the furnace room is its own little area where the tanks are, and that's where I keep all the mess. And it's kind of like my own little fish lab down there, which I really love.
Mm-hmm. It has really worked out perfectly for your hobby.
Yeah. And the nice part about being this passionate about a hobby I think for you is I can't say no to anything Kelley wants. Mm-hmm. If she ever decides like, I want to play the piano, I want to put a gymnasium in the middle of the house, I want to put a swimming pool in the backyard, how can I ever argue with her because I've made her suffer as a fish wife?
I just got to play the fish tank card. And
that's right.
Like that.
Which she doesn't abuse.
But I don't.
Occasionally she'll pull it out, but
more often than not, or more not than often, mm-hmm. I should say.
So one thing I've definitely noticed being around, always talking about this stuff, is you've actually picked up on a lot of the fish terms.
You know what? More than I should. More than any person should.
I disagree with that. So out of all of the fish that I've had over the years, what would be your favorite?
Ooh, that's tough. There's different levels because, we've seen these fish go through different stages of their lives. Actually, as funny as that is to say, we've seen fish lay eggs and we've brought the eggs to hatch, which was pretty cool. So that with the Banggai, the Bengals, it's the Super Bowl today.
Oh yeah, it's the Super Bowl today.
And they're playing. So.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, the Banggais.
So Banggais are one of your favorites.
I wouldn't say one of my favorites necessarily, but just probably one of the more memorable moments of.
Plus, we had babies.
Yeah, because they had babies, and I went downstairs one day, and the eggs, they were wiggling, and I actually got to witness a fish being born out of an egg.
So we don't have any kids yet. So this is my poor wife. This is how she's pulling out that inner nurture as when she sees fish babies. But yeah, I'm cool with that for now.
Yeah. So that was really memorable. But my favorite fish, we had a beautiful yellow tang. Actually, so we had a yellow tang that we really liked. Unfortunately, we no longer have it. But in this tank back here, we have a Scopus tang. And I think I like the Scopus tang a lot.
Why?
Because we named it. We gave it a name, and it just it's become just a kind of a funny point between us.
And what was it?
Opus. The Scopus. Opus the Scopus thing.
So when we first put him in the tank, he was kind of surveying around. He was checking out the yellow tank, who we called Hope.
Yes.
And what did Opus say to Hope?
Well, he said, "Hi, my name's Opus, and I'm a Scopus."
Oh God, this makes us sound pretty weird.
Yeah, but I think that's why I really like Opus, is because we kind of gave him a story. Mm-hmm. But aesthetic wise, I think I like the wrasse. Mm-hmm. The colors on the wrasse are just so pretty. and it's definitely your eye just goes to the wrasse.
And that's a Melanaris wrasse. The other cool thing about the Melanaris wrasse is that it hides in our substrate, and then in the morning you can see it pop its head up, and it's pretty cool. But he's been a bad boy, and he's down in quarantine because he was eating peppermint shrimp, so he's in there for now.
Speaking of his quarantine, so where Mitchell has a lot of his other aquatic things, like your aquaponic system and all that, is down in the furnace room. And I just happened to be walking down there one day. I was checking our internet or something because that's where it is as well. And just out of the corner of my eye, I see in his quarantine tank is like one of my nice glass Tupperware. Like I really like the glass Tupperware because I just like being able to throw it in the microwave. And I remember like I made it a point one time to like get rid of all of the plastic and fill our drawers with glass Tupperware. And of course, I happened to see it in the bottom of one of our fish tanks.
So the Melanaris wrasse will need some sand. And I didn't want to put a whole bunch of sand in the bottom of the tank. So I had to put a container in there, and naturally I just grabbed the glass one because that was what was there. So we have a few stories here that Kelley. So this is very much Kelley. I'm not one to.
Well, because these things don't happen to you; they happen to me, and that's why they stay in my mind.
Okay, let's go through the list here. First one. Oh yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah. So I think our first one I had wrote down the word vacuuming. So the word vacuuming has taken on a whole nother term in our house. So years and years back when Mitch was defending his masters, it was the morning of his masters and he must have been nervous. So he was kind of like going about the house. We were having people over after. So I had taken the vacuum out of our closet, and to get the vacuum back in the closet, like you had to kind of move some stuff around. So I was in another room and I heard the sounds of that closet being moved around, and I had to say like, "Oh, Mitch, like don't put the vacuum away yet. Like I'm not done with it." And he says, "Oh, okay, I won't," because he wasn't even vacuuming. He was looking for the tubes, like his hose to do a water change. So, like the morning of his masters, like you'd think he'd be like, reviewing all of his stuff, and which he was at one point, but I think you just needed to relax, and what better way to relax than to do a water change on your fish tank?
It's true. And that is true. I definitely use this hobby as a way to relax.
Yeah. And I think it's a great way to relax.
For sure. It's an active way of relaxing.
Yes.
And there's more than enough maintenance to do when you have the systems. You're pretty deep into this hobby. Instead of calling them a fish tank, you start calling them systems.
Yes, I agree with you.
We have some systems in this house.
Yes. So now the word vacuuming, like if one of us is, like maybe we're expecting the other one to be like maybe tidying up a bit or like unloading the dishwasher, we'll be like, "Oh, like, what are you doing?" And we'll say like vacuuming, because we're not doing like the thing that we're supposed to be doing. So that was always a good one I liked. His latest, and I think kind of an odd one, is his weird obsession with fishnets. Like not the stockings. I should clarify, but like actual nets. Mm-hmm. So it all started maybe about a month ago. We had to make a stop on the way home because he found a really good deal on a net on Kijiji. And so we just stopped. He grabbed it out of the mailbox, and it's like this wooden net. And he's like, "Hey, I got a net. It was a great deal." I said, "Okay, great, sure." And then like last week, I think it was, you came in the door and here he is standing with this bigger net, and he's like, "It was a really good deal." Like
sometimes you just see a good deal on a net. I mean, like if you were in a mall and you saw a purse and it was a smoking deal, you'd buy it and you'd say, "Hey, It was a good deal.
I know. And you know what? You're right. And the way you're justifying it right now is the way that you've been justifying it. Like you've been coming home and be like, but it's not just a net. I can use it for this. And I can use it for this. Like just like when someone would buy an outfit, they'd be like, I can wear it here. And I can wear it here. It's so versatile.
But hold on here. With these nets, okay, and for each one of these stories, I think it's worth explaining a fish guy's view of this net situation. Okay, so you have to have all these different, hole sizes in your nets. So first off, I've got a brine shrimp net, which is really, 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 really fine. And that net is used for catching brine shrimp and fish babies and things like that. Then go a little bit higher. You've got a bigger net, but for small fish. So it's a little bit bigger, but it's still like a small dip net type of thing. And then you got to have a big dip netter, for the big fish that are in your tank. But that one still has kind of a flimsy rod, but it's maneuverable, so you can get it into the corners and all this stuff. And then we take one step up further, and this is a good one. I've been using a fly fishing net. Another net. They're only about 2 feet long, but they're rigid and they're perfect for catching big fish. Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit bigger. And then most recently I bought one. I'm like, okay, so now I have this 2 foot net, but I need to catch bigger fish. But now we have this aquaponics system, which I think I've talked about in the past. It's basically a big trough. There's like a fiberglass trough in the basement that has fish in it, and those fish are big. So to catch them, you've got to reach down into this bottom of this trough, but you also have something rigid. So the 2 foot fly fishing net's not going to work. So I had to get the longer handle on a longer net.
You had to.
Of course I had to. And then from there, we took one step up even higher, and it's like a full on fishing net that you'd use for catching fish, like for fishing off of a boat. And that net is for, okay, so here's a tip. Here's a hot tip for people out there. If you're trying to catch a fish, a saltwater fish, in a big reef tank like this, use different size nets. So what I did, I just had to catch a long-nosed hawkfish, and you just take full. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, you keep going because my story will take a lot longer.
So you have to use I used a full-on fishing net. So this fishing net's like 2 feet wide by 2 feet. Stick that into the tank, and it kind of it takes your big 130-gallon tank and it cuts it down to a quarter of its size. Now that fish is trapped just within this, space of the big net, and then you can get in there and use one of your other smaller nets that have the looser handle, catch your fish, bam. That's why. So it's right tool. BRS TV, they always say this, right tool, right job. Fishnets, right tool, right job.
All right. You know what? And I will give that to you as well. Like you said, you kind of have an explanation for each one of these stories, which I don't know if that makes it even funnier.
I think we could go, I honestly think I could pull all of the fish stuff that I have, and even though it looks like garbage sometimes, I could literally explain to you exactly why I still have it.
I agree. And you know what? It kind of goes both ways. Like, out of the two of us, I think we can agree that I am kind of the messier one. But the thing is, I know where everything is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you'd be like, how can you live like this?
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that she knows where everything is.
But just like you said, like, you could pull something out. You remember where that one piece was, whether it be like on a shelf somewhere or in the bottom of a bin. Like, so I get that. I get why you want to keep all those parts, because when you do need those, when you're doing all your hobby stuff, you have it.
Boom.
So...
And okay, so just before we keep going any further, I just wanted to give our sponsor a shout out, which just happens to be For the Reef for this episode. For the Reef is a microplastic-free clothing company that supports coral reef conservation, and it happens to be run by us two. So we've got our For the Reef gear on today. If you want some For the Reef stuff, just go to www.forthereef.com. We've talked about it in the past about what For the Reef means to us. And today we decided to be the sponsors for the podcast. So if you want to check things out, again, forthereef.com, For the Reef on Instagram, For the Reef on TikTok, For the Reef's everywhere. So that's that. I also, while we're here, of course, we've got to give a shout out to the Cayman Eco Divers, who is working kind of as our nonprofit partner now. In the next few weeks, I'm really hoping to try and go down there and show you guys what Aaron Hunt and the Cayman Eco Divers are doing, so we can kind of actually show you the actual conservation work that we are trying to be a part of and support. So if that's something you're into, definitely check it out. And that's that. So number 3.
Rocks in the shower. So I don't know if there are any other hobbyists out there, or maybe a spouse or a partner of a hobbyist, but part of, keeping your aquarium clean, you need to clean the rocks from time to time. So what will happen sometimes is Mitch will put these rocks in our bathtub or our shower, and I'll open the curtain to get in, and there are these giant rocks. And that was more so when you had the fresh water.
Mm-hmm.
You would wash them when you cleaned your tank and stuff like that. But I think there was one time where you had cleaned them that day, and I went to go take a shower, and you told me, you were like, do you need to shower tonight? And I said, well, I would really like to. And you're like, well, I washed the rocks today, and that uses water. So
yeah. So okay, here's the story with that one. We were living in an apartment, or a townhouse or whatever, and we were renting at the time. So we didn't actually pay for water. Water was part of our bill, or part of our rent. And I guess really I shouldn't even have been worrying about the water bill, because that's what we were paying for. But normal people probably have less of a water bill than we do because of the fish tanks. So sometimes I would use a lot of water, and I would be worried that we would be making our landlord mad. That's why we did that. Of course, I never stopped Kelly from showering but it
still happened.
It's true.
It still said.
It's true. I mean, and okay. So another thing about that with the bathtub is it's really only, this sounds weird, but only until this house have I had a utility sink. So
true.
Anywhere else I've lived, I've never actually had a utility sink. So now we're living lavish, and we have a utility sink, and that's where I do all of washing the filter socks and the sponges, and occasionally rocks if I need to wash them off of something.
You've made it when you have a utility
That's
sink.
Right. We're living large. Yeah. Okay. And actually, here's another pro tip. Sponge filters for freshwater tanks. If you're wanting to clean out that filter, but you don't want to use a lot of water, this is so bad. So when you take your sponges out, just throw them on the floor or on the bathtub bottom, and then when you go to shower, run the water. Don't use any soap yet, but you get in there and you just stomp around on the sponges. It'll work out all that gunk. Then you just throw those sponges out of the tub and you do your shower, and it's fine.
And this is a normal thought process for you, right?
Yeah, well, 2 birds, 1 stone. When you have the hobbies like I do, you've got to be efficient, and that's what I was doing.
Efficiency.
And if I know that this guy is probably not listening to this, but a good friend of mine, Johnny McClellan, when we were growing up, because I've been doing this washing rocks thing for a long time, and he's now a plumber. He came over and plumbed our tank, he did the plumbing for our kitchen, and we were setting everything up in the furnace room, and we were setting up this utility sink. So he actually set up the utility sink, and while he was doing it, he was making fun of me the whole time. He goes, this is the most expensive way to wash rocks I've ever seen. But, it's all part of the fun.
Yes. And it's also a part of why we can never move. Because our fish tanks, when we moved in, there's holes through the floor so that the sump and the whole system, and I know the word sump, that's a pretty good knowledge bit there. Anyway, we can't move because our fish tanks are literally plumbed, like Mitch was saying, through our floor. And if you go downstairs, there's pipe that, like a PVC pipe that runs across, that was put in as well, that goes to the furnace room.
Yeah. So when we first moved into this house, I knew where I wanted the tank. But the challenge was that the tank was about 20 feet away from this furnace room downstairs. So if we wanted to put the tank where we wanted to, we had to plumb.
And do you remember my one rule when we moved into this house about where fish tanks could go?
Couldn't go in the kitchen.
Yeah, there you go.
So I thought it was a great idea. I had a white stand, and I had this idea of a mangrove tank with like an open top. And I was thinking this would be amazing in our kitchen because there was a perfect little spot there. It measured out perfectly.
Yeah.
And back to the whole, like, when she puts her foot down on something, I don't fight. It's just, you know what? Okay. Yeah. There's not a hot tip. When your wife said, or, when your wife says no, and you're a crazy fish guy, it's best just to shut your mouth. And
what's in that spot right now? A cute little coffee bar.
Yeah, I know. It would be way better if it was a fish tank. It was a huge mistake.
No.
So this tank is plumbed about 20 feet down to the furnace room. Actually, I do some videos on Dender Aquatics. You can find it on Instagram and TikTok. And in those kind of show what I'm talking about, where we do I do some, I just like showing the hobby, for myself. And I like to look back on the social media platforms and actually look at what I've been doing over the years in this hobby. So on there, we do a little tour to actually show how this whole system is plumbed into the house and how insane we are. Me, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say we.
Yeah, it's definitely me. I know it's me, but I wouldn't be me without my crazy.
I know, and it's one of the reasons why I love you.
So that's that.
Number 5, planning our errand days around stopping at the fish store. So that one has always been, usually like it'll be a Saturday, and these are my favorite days. I love errand days. We wake up, we go to the gym, we come back, we have a little breakfast, and then we get a coffee, and then we go out to do our errands. And I don't know, I like that time because it's time that we just kind of spend just like getting stuff done. And they're one of my favorite days, I think. And so we kind of think, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to pick up anything? And then I'll say like, oh, I'd really like to go here. Or we have an appointment here at this other place. But then Mitch will say, well, like, geographically, if we go here, like it kind of doesn't really make sense because, we have to stop at the fish store last. And I go, wait, why? He goes, well, like if, we go and I happen to get something, we have to go right home after.
It's true. And I think every single fish person can attest to this, that sometimes, when you're running errands, you've got to plan around the fish store and you don't want to leave the fish in the car.
No, I get that.
So we live about 30 minutes away from any local fish store. So if we're going up into that area, we're also going to probably do some shopping and all those kind of things. So you got to consider the fish when you're out picking up your.
And so it's always our last stop at the end of our errand day. And, sometimes at the end of those errand days, I do get like kind of tired. It's just a lot of in and out. We always pick up random stuff like that you don't think that you need, but then you're like, you see it and you're like, oh yeah, we need this for the house. And I think we end up getting more stuff than we planned whenever we do errand days. So sometimes at the end of errand days, we get to the fish store, and I think you've talked about this with Ian on one of your shows before. We'll get to the fish store, and Mitch will be just like, you know what? Just want to go in really quick. Just want to, peek around. I know what I'm looking for. It'll be 2 seconds, in and out. So sometimes, like, I would stay in the car, and not often though. Usually, I would go in and say hi to everybody. But sometimes I would stay in the car. And you said, oh, it'll be like 2 seconds. I'll be super quick. And the next thing I know, Ian is the owner of the fish store is coming out with a hot cup of coffee because he knows that Mitch will be much more than 2 minutes. So
in a beautiful, sustainable Marine Canada Flipside Eco Divers mug, which we still have. And
we do. I use it often. Thank you, Ian.
But I mean, yeah, like it's that's part of the whole gig too. So I've also found there's, you know, everybody knows the dirty fish stores, right? And like, you know, some of the fish stores you go into, some guys and girls owners like to keep the store cleaner or do keep the store cleaner, and others don't. Some stores smell like fish store, look like fish store, and you know, you usually find a good deal in there, but it's not the best place to bring your spouse on a date.
No, but I would say Ian's is definitely a nice, clean store.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I love going into Ian's. You can spend.
We have
spent hours there.
The thing about Ian's store is obviously we end up hanging out and talking to Ian and Tim and all the different folks that hang out in that spot. It's like
it's a family, the fish family.
It's like fish family,
a little fish family.
Yeah. So okay, so then how do you? So I spend a fair amount of money on this hobby.
Yeah.
How do you feel about all of that? I mean, so we've talked about the spending and stuff like that, and I think that within reason, you know, we always watch what we're spending on the hobby. Why are you so supportive about me and this hobby? Because to be frank, I do spend a lot of money. I mean, I know we're not going broke because of it or anything, but I mean, like, it's a pretty expensive hobby when it comes down to it. I mean, all of this stuff, it's generally pretty expensive. Why are you so supportive?
Well, number one, I think it's pretty obvious. Like, you can see that it's definitely something you love doing, and it's literally a part of you. Like, our nieces and nephews call you Uncle Fish. Like, it's a part of you, and it makes you happy. You're the type of person that can't sit still, and it kind of like you make art in our house.
You heard that?
I said it.
She said it.
You know, no, I think I support it because I think it's a positive hobby. You know, and you don't make really rash decisions about it.
Well, that's another.
It's not like you drill holes in our house or anything.
Yeah, that would be
from
crazy.
it.
Yeah. Okay? So, what would you say to any of the fish people listening? What would you say is some important things to consider when living with someone and having this hobby?
So we're talking to the people, the hobbyists, not the people that live with the hobbyists?
Yeah, the hobbyists.
Okay.
I'm assuming the hobbyists are the ones listening to the podcast.
True. I don't know. Like, I think as long as, like, it's your tanks are nice, or I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because I'm going to be honest. The tanks aren't always the nicest, like, and I mean that in like when, those times where we had 4 or 5 tanks, they had purposes, like some tanks were like a breeding tank. So there was like a fake, not an anemone, but
urchin,
a fake urchin that, aesthetically it didn't look the best, but it had a purpose. And I think, just.
So, okay, so let's go and rank here. Smell.
Yes.
Looks.
Smell.
Price. What's the number one thing that if this happens, we're going to have a problem?
I think smell, and like if it like damages the house or something, because with fish tanks comes a lot of humidity. Salt from saltwater tanks. I've noticed it can get on the walls, like, and smell. I think as long as those three, it's kind of like, like.
I think you said smell and damage and smell. Kelly has the nose of a bloodhound, and if we have like a sunroom here, if I shut the doors to the house, open every single window, run fans and blow fresheners, and if I were to smoke a cigar out there 2 weeks later, she would know.
Yes.
And she's just got this sense of smell.
I don't know why, like.
So obviously stinky, this is for my own good here. Nothing stinky and nothing that's going to damage. I mean, the damage one is easy enough. And quite honestly, I don't like things to smell either.
No. And because the way I think of it too, it's like, think of like when people come over to your house. You don't want to be the house that, like, you walk in and like you can smell the humidity, you can feel the moisture.
Yeah. And that's pretty easy for us to manage.
Yeah.
I mean, like humidity, we have dehumidifier that we run when we need to. The furnace and the air conditioner usually take it out, so that's not really a problem. And then like I've over the years I've become more and more aware of redundancies and things like that, so that damage doesn't happen. I mean, I think I've flooded floors probably 100 times in my life, and
never with me.
Yeah, well,
I don't think that's not true. I can think of.
That's not true.
That I know of.
So I mean, like, I think with experience, you just start to learn the ways that your tank fails, and like different things are going to cause problems, and like you just got to be a little more aware of it.
And I think that was such a hard question for me, is because you really haven't given me a hard time with your hobby. Like, you've done a great job at keeping it clean. We've never had a smell, at least that I've noticed. If something has gone wrong, like I've just found out, I didn't know about it.
Yeah, and if you really want, I don't think this is status quo. Kelly's an angel, and she lets me get away with a lot. And I think a lot of other people, I mean, sometimes people walk into the house and I think everything's clean. Kelly thinks everything looks clean. Nothing smells. Everything's cool. And then people look at Kelly like, how do you put up with this? Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know.
I don't know either. Maybe I'm just used to it now.
Like, she's like, I don't know what's that Stockholm syndrome, or what's the
That's love the one you're with, I think.
Yeah. I think this one is like, she's just become sensitized to it.
Desensitized.
Yeah, desensitized. But
yeah, I think so too. I think that's pretty much about it for all of the really times that have kind of stuck out to me.
Yeah. I think like it's just a fun thing to do this podcast, and because talk about like it is, this hobby is just it can be such a big part of your life. It really sucks you in, it evolves, and you just become part of it. And I mean, like with me, it's literally like my entire life. It's my work, it's my play, it's everything. So
yeah,
it was a package deal, I think.
I didn't know it at the time, but I learned it.
Yeah, and I mean, and it goes both ways. I really, really, I really, really know and appreciate all of the ways that she allows me to follow my passions and live out my, my life that way. So that's it from a fish guy and his fish wife. This was really fun to go and chat about what we laugh about all the time. Yeah. I swear this is the honest truth. 90% of the time we're laughing about this stuff. Yeah. 10% of the time we're fighting. It's
I wouldn't even say fighting. I think it's more of just like really like
yeah.
But
yeah, I'm lucky she has a sense of humor. So we'll kind of leave it at that. I think it was.
I think overall, all of all of the good outweighs the bad. And not even that there is bad, because all of those stories, like they're stories that I tell, and it makes me smile, it makes me laugh. And so there really is no bad, I guess.
Yeah.
I said it.
I mean, just yesterday we were in Home Depot.
Oh man.
And I bought a big sheet of foam insulation to use as a floating raft for aquaponics. And people at Home Depot would think I'm like a contractor with all the random stuff I buy out there, but really it's just for the fish stuff.
Yeah.
So kind of leave it there. It's Super Bowl Sunday. It's one of the best days of the year.
Yeah.
So we got some friends coming over, and we've got some fish tacos. Who would have guessed? So hope everybody enjoys the game. Go Rams. We're from Windsor, Ontario, right across the border from Detroit. We watched Stafford play for the Detroit Lions for our whole life, and I don't know, Kelly feels the same way, but I'm excited to watch Stafford win a Super Bowl because I think he's gonna. And
I'm excited for the halftime show.
Yeah, of course, and the fish tacos.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for listening. Until next time,